Welcome, Taurus, and welcome to your July Moon Magic Deep Dive Forecast, where I unpack the month from a lunar perspective. And by the end of the video, you have a clear picture of what's upcoming in terms of your energy, work, relationships, or finances. Thank you so much for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundel. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to grow. July has a huge amount of celestial activity that's both rare and potentially groundbreaking. But at the heart of all of this is the activity of the King and the Queen of the heavens. Yes, the sun and the moon, and the relationship that they forge to one another through the lunations. At the very end of June, we had a full moon in the sign of Capricorn. And there is the event chart on a screen. Why am I bringing up June? Well, it's because that energy provides a backdrop through the first 2 weeks of the new month. And for you, Taurus, although the moon is in the practical Capricorn, sharing that earthy sensibilities of yours, and the sun in the nurturing Cancer, they go across the third and the ninth house cusp, very much to do with communication. And ironically, the communicator, Mercury, is in a retrograde from the off, and that takes us through to the 23rd of the month. So the chances are communication is going to be a big theme for you this month. But let's look at the role of Neptune. So there's Neptune in the 12th house of your chart, which can be to do with things that aren't obvious, can be to do with our shadow side, our subconscious, but it can also be to do with what other people are doing that we can't necessarily see. And Neptune can create confusion and illusion. So one of the first tips to you is right through to the middle of the month with the new moon is make sure that your communications are as crisp as possible. And it's not just because of Mercury, it's because of Neptune. So you may find yourself, if something does go awry, just creating a process of thoughts in your mind, which is something to just choke off. If you do find yourself really starting to expand something in a negative way and thinking the worst potentially. So handling your imagination and dreams potentially is going to be a big part of the process the first 2 weeks. But you can see that Saturn, like Neptune, is continuing in that psychological 12th house for the next couple of years. And if you go through to the quarter moon, we get two a month. They provide a backdrop energy for a week. They don't get talked about on YouTube very much. They're critically important. And the quarter moon on the 7th is actually seeing Saturn in a conjunction with the moon. And in fact, Saturn and the sun are in a pretty tense right angle through the first 10 days of this month. And that's emphasizing again the potential to think in an emotional way, Cancer, and with Mercury in the sign in retrograde, in a way which may be a little negative or fearful, or be more self-conscious about what other people may be thinking about you. So it's possible your confidence could take a bit of a hit through the first phase of this month if you allow those, and I'm not trying to put this thought in your mind, but if you do find some negative thoughts coming into your thinking, try to choke those off. Keep that sense of dynamic positivity. You can see that your ruler Venus is in the fourth house to this part of the month, but she does move into the wonderful fifth house on the ninth, and that can bring a lighter vibe to bear. And to be honest, Venus is going to be very influential for the rest of the month thereafter. That takes us through to the new moon. Why is a Cancer new moon the best new moon of the year? As far as the moon's concerned, it's because the moon rules Cancer. So you get an opportunity to share your emotions and your ideas in a much more joined up way. It's just the planet of ideas, Mercury, is in the mix and still in a retrograde, but also in a square with Saturn. So not necessarily such an easy new moon to embrace, but essentially new moons in Cancer are about setting our intentions around our home, and family and emotional life, but for you, very much around your ideas. So, pardon me, combining your ideas with your emotion, it's not something we always find easy. You know, a classic British thing, for example, is people ask us how we are. We say, "Oh, I'm absolutely fine." You know, we could be walking around with virtually our leg hanging off, but that will be our automatic response because it's so ingrained in our psyche to respond in that way, even if it doesn't really match the reality of our feelings. Now, it may be different where you are, but that is something just to be conscious of. Matching emotion with the facts of a situation. Now, the intriguing thing about the new moon is also that Venus, newly arrived in that wonderful fifth house, is in a square with Uranus, the planet of impetuousness, and can create very quick decisions. You may find yourself wanting to splash out on something at the heart of this month, and if it's something you can afford, then why not? It really could be a luxury that you deserve. But that takes us through to the next quarter moon on the 21st. And the irony of this, it's in Libra. Why is it ironic? Well, if you go back to when the sun moved into Cancer, immediately we had a Libra quarter moon. So we get a strange piece of celestial synchronicity and it's repeated. But you can see for you personally, the sun is in house 3, which can be quick movements. The position of the moon in the sixth house can be to do with practical issues, such as the domestic sphere. But the sixth house can also give us a desire to be a bit more virtuous. But it's a quarter moon that could see you try a little bit too hard to overcome some of that lower energy of the earlier parts of the month, but actually push yourself too hard and actually scatter yourself too thinly. So it's going to be important to really just focus on what's really necessary. But look at Mars. Mars is in a square with Venus and will be in a square with Venus through the last 10 days of this month. So that desire to perhaps be a bit more extravagant or very generous is going to be there, but it could also see you attracted to someone that you find rather irresistible. But whether they're the right person for you or not is another matter. So what the sun in that third house is asking you to do is make sure your thinking's crisp. But you can see Mercury through to the 23rd still in that challenging retrograde. That brings us through to the last event of the month. It is in Aquarius, and for you, it is very much about your work, your connection to the world. And you can see the moon is in almost an exact conjunction with Pluto. Now, Pluto continues to be incredibly important for you personally, as far as your professional or worldly connections for many years to come. And this month doesn't change that. In fact, Pluto receives a lot of good energy this month. But on this event, if something is really seriously out of kilter between the demands you've got professionally and keeping your home and emotional life in balance, it could show up strongly. You can see that Mars still in that square with Venus, your ruler. So that desire to perhaps have a little bit more rock and roll around your social life, or perhaps around your romantic situation is still there. But the sun through the last 10 days of this month is asking you to be more mindful of the more nurturing, homely, and family side of your situation. We do have a Jupiter Cazimi for the first time since 2015 on the 29th too. So that's very exciting. So if you're wanting to make a change to where you live, for example, move into somewhere bigger or better, this could be a very important event. But I think the moon very close to Pluto is saying, watch any obsession that could creep in, or you could encounter someone who's a very powerful person who wants in some ways to dominate your decisions, and it may be someone in your family. So just be conscious of that. And also Mercury, despite being out of retrograde, still in a square with Saturn. So your 12th house, very much to do with the shadow side of ourselves, maybe to do with anxieties, can be to do with, in traditional astrology, hidden enemies, is very powerfully activated all through this month, suggesting that when it comes to your movements, physical, travel wise, your interactions with ideas, your conversations are all being influenced very strongly by perhaps your deeper emotions or perhaps some deeper inhibitions or fears. And that's something to be conscious of. But there's a much more impulsive energy showing up as Uranus squares off with Venus, and then we have Mars squaring with Venus too, which could see you make some sudden moves around your love life or around finances. And by the end of the month, getting that balance between a hugely important Jupiter cazimi and the moon in a conjunction with Pluto on the Aquarius full moon could see you asking some big questions about what you do for a living, if you really enjoy the people you work with, and whether it is time for a big change. I'm going to summarize those four areas of vitality, work, relationships, and finances next, Taurus. But just before I do, I've slashed the price of my personal horoscope reports. For many years, it was buy two, get 30% off. It's now buy one and get three. Because of the cost of living increases, I want to make the charts as accessible as possible. You get your life roadmap report, which helps us to understand the patterns in our situation. And then you get your free 12 months transits, but also your Chaconic soul karmic analysis. Please see below for more. If you've yet to watch your July monthly forecast from a general perspective, or your Jupiter into Leo 13-month forecast, please click on the eye within the screen and that will take you through to them. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, it'd be an absolute pleasure. Please see my testimonials below. And if you've yet to sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, please check that out too. Get your early day celestial pit stop. So if we wind back to the end of June and the energy that you bring into the month, as far as physical vitality is concerned, I think you need to use the energy you've got very carefully, Taurus, because having Neptune and Saturn in the 12th house, very psychological. Having the sun and the moon in the third and ninth houses could make you very restless. And because Mercury's in a retrograde in those areas, if you rush journeys, rush conversations, rush trying to do anything, it's not necessarily going to get you to your destination any quicker. So very important to conserve your energy and take your time with all your responses. If we go through to the heart of the month with the new moon in Cancer, it is a chance to say how you feel, but just be conscious of the role of Mercury in the retrograde and Saturn still in that 12th house. So I think your nervous system could be quite sensitive this month, so just be conscious of that. As far as your professional situation, you do have Pluto right at the top of your chart, and you can see by the end of the month with that Aquarius full moon, if you're not enjoying it, a big change may be needed. But if you're doing something you really do uh, find stimulating and intriguing, I think the combination of Uranus and Mars linking up to Pluto at the top of your chart can see some very dynamic activity. But it's just by the end of the month you do get a big question mark asked by the planets if it really is for you or not. But I think overwhelmingly, if you're open to new approaches, it can be a time of progress. The same is true around finance, but the intriguing thing is that part of you that loves luxury is really lit up in the second half of this month, and you may find it very difficult to resist splashing out on something rather lovely. As far as your relationships are concerned, with Venus moving into your fifth house from the ninth through to the end of the month, that can be very romantic. And it could be that you're going to be very generous to an existing partner. But if you're in a relationship where it isn't quite connected, you're not hearing from that person, there's breakdowns in communication, or there's mystery or intrigue or unreliability, I think there's a big test in store, to be honest. And as far as your neat relationships are concerned outside of romance, I think you have a chance to work hard on it. A family or home-based relationship could improve towards the end of the month, but not if you feel that there's some kind of power that's being held over you. And even in a long-term relationship, you're going to want to push back if it feels a bit unequal between you and your partner. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Have a great July and look forward to seeing you again soon.